Hey Gator fans. So in this video we're going to be talking about the rivalry between the Florida Gators, I almost said Florida Bulldogs, the Florida Gators and the Georgia Bulldogs, and how this year could have a big impact in the dynamic between the two teams, uh, both not just in the sport of football, but in the sport of basketball as well. So in November of 2021, Billy Napier was hired from Louisiana to Florida. This was after Dan Mullen got fired from Florida after a tumultuous season, what was really a disastrous finish to what looked like a promising Florida career at first. Um, he lost to Missouri and was fired while he was still at 5-6, with still a game left to potentially. But Florida said, you know, let's just start off the new head coaching search now. And a few weeks later, Billy Napier was hired from Louisiana, coming off a Sun Conference championship, a Sun Belt championship, and he then afterwards completed his time with Louisiana, then showed up to Florida. As he was beginning his Florida tenure, Kirby Smart, was leading the Georgia Bulldogs to the back to the college football playoffs because they had not been in it since 2017. And Georgia, had that dynamic defense in 2021 with all those NFL players that were on it. Um, and that dynamic Georgia defense helped lead Georgia to not only their first championship with Kirby Smart, but the program's first title since 1980. About a couple of months later, Georgia made a bold move in swiping head basketball coach Mike White from the Florida Gators basketball program, prompting the Gators to hire San Francisco coach Todd Golden as his replacement. And it was a very shrewd move of what the Georgia Bulldogs did, because they saw that, okay, for the first time in a long time, well, I wouldn't say in a long time, because they were kind of better than Florida throughout Dan Mullen's tenure since they hired Kirby Smart. But what I mean is, like, they were finally at a national championship program while Florida seemingly was at its lowest. And by hiring Mike White, their basketball coach, to coach the Georgia basketball team, what they were trying to do is that they were trying to bury Florida in both sports. They obviously had a lot. They were above their rivals in football by a large margin, and they hired that new coach to put the nail in the coffin so they could dominate the Gators on the basketball court simultaneously, because is Florida. Georgia's not really known for their basketball. Football, yes, but Georgia basketball, they're one of the. I'm just gonna say it. They're one of the lesser. They're one of the weaker brands in SEC basketball. So they were doing that to try to, turn the tide in both areas. And for a while, it was starting to look like, what, that now Florida was going to fall underneath both in that sport, because the following year, while Georgia repeated as they repeated as national champions in football, winning back-to-back college football national championships, which was something the Florida Gators did in terms of repeating as national champions, but that was for basketball under Billy Donovan back in the day, and this was actually while Florida was winning national championships in 2 and a 3 year span under Urban Meyer in football as well. So Georgia was celebrating back-to-back national championships in football, which is something that the Florida fan base got to see in basketball as well. But that was a long time ago, and while Georgia was repeating as national champions, Florida had back-to-back 6-7 records. And Todd Golden's first year at Florida, which was started around the same time Billy Napier's first season at Florida started, he had a losing record in his first year as Napier did. Todd Golden was 16-17, Billy Napier was 6-7. And it looks like the Gators are going to be in the midst of the darkest period for their sports programs this century, right? Because they were coming out of the 2010s decades, where they had their first couple of bowl eligible seasons, and not just bowl eligible seasons, but also some having a losing record to Georgia, a losing record to Florida State. They lost to Miami in the early 2010s. Tennessee broke their losing streak to Florida. Kentucky broke their losing streak to Florida. Vanderbilt broke their losing streak to Florida. But as much as the 2010s decades is looked down on by Florida fans, the 2020s decades hasn't really been that much better. Well, in basketball, they've been a lot better, but in football, it seems to be getting it seems to have gotten worse than that. So it looked like Georgia was finally going to rise above Florida in both football and basketball at the same time. Mike White in his first year at Athens, it wasn't really an eventful year, 16-16 record, but it's year one, so I'm pretty sure Georgia fans were like not looking at him like, yeah, that's okay, it's year one. Then you turn the clock to 2023. Florida had another losing record under Billy Napier, going 5-7. And in going 5-7, they missed the bowl game, obviously. And this is when the Billy Napier hot seat talk began, because of course came that very on paper tough schedule where he was facing 11 Power 4 teams, and what could be the most pivotal season of his entire coaching career. On the basketball court during that 2023 season, which went into 2024, the Florida Gators basketball team saw improvement. They went from 16-17 to 24-12. They reached the SEC tournament finals and the first round of the NCAA tournament. Mike White at Georgia also saw improvement, going from 16 wins to 20 wins in year two. And Georgia, while they didn't make the college football playoff and win the national championship, they did go 13-1 and won an Orange Bowl victory. So, and for Georgia, that's considered a down year, going 13-1 and not making the playoff. For them, that's a down year. So then you had last season. Georgia returned to the college football playoffs after Kirby Smart won his third SEC championship with the Bulldogs. And Billy Napier, as Florida fans know, started off 1-2, getting blown out by Miami and Texas A&M in two of the first three games of the season, both of which were at home. So, of course, Florida fans, myself included, were just demanding for this guy to be fired, because we were, tired of the losing, tired of the lack of performance in big games, tired of just looking absolutely unprepared for the key moments. But then Florida was able to respond valiantly by winning 7 of their last 10 games to finish the season 8-5, getting their first bowl victory under Billy Napier, ending some of the losing streaks that they had to Kentucky and Florida State and LSU. They also beat their annoying little brothers in UCF. Sorry, I just had to throw that shot in there. And they were able to end the season on a positive note, which started to look like a disaster at the beginning of the season, and that bought Billy Napier a 4th year and a 2nd year with to work with DJ Lackway. Now, on the basketball court, both Georgia and Florida made first. Both achieved higher than they had the previous 2 seasons. Georgia made their first NCAA tournament under Mike White. They went to the first round in the March Madness tournament, but then they got dominated by Gonzaga. So they finally made an NCAA tournament, but they couldn't get his first tournament win as a head coach for the Bulldogs. Florida, on the other hand, with Todd Golden, they won the national championship and won an SEC tournament in the process. 5th SEC tournament in program history, 3rd national championship in program history, winning 36 games, beating a bunch of teams that finished in the top 10 in the process. Houston, Auburn, I believe it was Houston, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, and there was I believe Texas Tech also finished in the top 10 as well. So it was a very good year. Obviously, when you win the national championship, it's a great year for Todd Golden, and he cemented himself in UF history by winning that 5th SEC tournament and that 3rd national championship, and he cemented himself as a head coach that doesn't appear to be leaving Gainesville anytime soon, as long as he wants to stay there. I don't think the institution obviously would be looking to get rid of him, and obviously he's well loved by the fan base. So now that brings me to the upcoming 2025 season. Now, Georgia fans have been begging Florida to keep Billy Napier for as long as possible the last few seasons, because obviously Billy Napier has not lived up to the expectations of what it is to be a Florida Gator football coach. He just hasn't. I'm not trying to take shots at him. It is what it is. But on the flip side of that, in terms of basketball, the way Georgia fans beg Billy Napier to stay at Florida fans have been thanking and rejoicing the Bulldogs for the fact that they took Mike White off of our hands, which allowed Florida to hire his replacement Todd Golden, which results in a national championship and potentially a repeat of a national championship with the roster that Mike White has put together through the transfer portal. So now for Florida, they have an opportunity to do what Georgia was trying to do, and that was rise above them in both sports, which was think more for the Bulldogs. Because Billy Napier, if he has I'm not going to say he's going to win a national championship, but if he does at Florida, and then Florida to repeat as national champions in basketball again, to have your biggest rival, who you begged their football coach to keep, and then you poached their basketball coach as a way to like sink Florida at both sports. If they both rise above you at the same time, that would have to sting very badly if you're a Georgia fan. And this is where things come into play for Billy Napier and Mike White at their respective programs. Todd Golden is as far away from the hot seat as Gainesville, Florida is from the planet Mars. Therefore, Billy Napier must know that his window is closing and that the expectations are as high as they'll ever be in his tenure. There's a lot of pressure on Billy Napier to have a really big year this upcoming season at Florida. Because right now you're looking up at Georgia, and at some point, if you're not going to rise above Georgia, when are you? With all the advantages you have coming into the season. That coach who was hired around the same time you were in basketball just won a national championship. So he showed that at Florida you can win at the highest level and that you can demand to win at the highest level. And Billy Napier has yet to do that. For Mike White in Georgia basketball, this is not a good look for you, considering that Georgia took you from Florida to elevate their basketball program, and the head coach that Florida replaces you with wins a national title before you, and not only does it, he does it at a way faster rate, because he did that in year 3. And even in year 2, he came close to winning an SEC tournament before he eventually did it the following year, the year that he won the national title. So if you're Mike White, there's also a lot of pressure on you to show that Georgia was right to steal you away from the rivals out in Gainesville. Because now if you fail to do so, that's now two big programs that you have an opportunity, two big SEC programs that you've had an opportunity to succeed in, and you have not been able to reach the summit of college basketball. And if you can't do that at those two programs, how can you be believed to do that anywhere else? So this is a very big year for both Mike White at Georgia basketball and a big year for Billy Napier in Florida football. And obviously, as a Gator fan, I want Billy Napier to do well. That just because I criticize him doesn't mean I root for him to lose. But he has to give me a reason to believe. And that's all that I'm asking for as a Florida fan. So big pressure for both of these coaches. But I'm a Florida Gator fan. I always root for the Gators. And as a Florida Gator fan would say, to hell with Georgia.